All right, welcome back. I'm working on the other side of the shop today because I was doing some repairs on some 3D printers and they're sitting over here actually running right now, and I should have put them back in the 3D print lab and started them on their prints, but it is what it is. So I'm over on this side. I got our helmet. Last week we glued the whole thing together, welded it together with a 3D print pen. Now we got to do the body work. So first thing I like to do is I have this old soldering iron, and I use this soldering iron to heat and smooth out everything I put on the 3D print stuff, and it also really melts everything together and makes a really strong bond. This thing will never come apart. Welding it together with the pen and then using this to smooth out those seams, it's going to be very strong. After that, I'm going to run over it with some files and maybe a little bit of the grinder to knock down some of the higher spots that I need to knock down. You can't use this a lot because it generates way too much heat and will just start melting instead, so you kind of got to move it across fairly fast. Once that's done, I'm going to go into sanding the whole thing with a DA sander with 80 grit. Once again, you have to kind of keep moving so you don't generate a lot of heat. The whole plan is to sand this down with 80, then start doing some body filler work. I like to use this Evercoat glaze putty. It's not too expensive, but it is a little more expensive. But if you've never used this and you use a lot of body filler on your work, you will love the way this sands. This stuff sands so fast and so easy. It's just the extra money, it's well worth it because of the time you save by using this. And then I'm going to go over the whole thing one more final time with 180 grit, and then hopefully by then it'll be ready for primer. So that's what we're going to do today. Also, I've got all the additional pieces. I had these printed off on a different printer, so that's why they're a different color. I got all the range finders, the ears. This ear goes right here. I got all these pieces to also sand and get ready for primer so we can get everything ready for eventually for paint. So strap in because we're going to start heating some more plastic. Okay, here you go. This will give you an idea how this works here. See how it's going to melt the plastic. So move it along. Once you get it started to melt, kind of go back and smooth it in on both sides. What this is doing is making sure you're melting the both halves or the both pieces that you've joined, and this really makes it much stronger. Now I'll go back over this with a file or a grinder and clean all this up and get it nice and smooth. But being that we're melting more plastic to both halves, it's making a wider, stronger seam. And it takes a little while. Now you can also do this without the plastic, without the 3D print pen. Like if I'd done the inside and left the outside seams bare, I could run this over and melt those two together. Then I would need to run probably a body filler over top of it because I would have created a low spot. This way I'm creating a high spot that I can sand down to the proper level without adding material. And that's kind of one of the goals, is not add more material unless you have, or at least not add any body filler that you don't want to. Because even the best body fillers can still crack if you ever drop this or if it flexes too much. We're going to use thin coats. We're not going to be putting very much body filler on this at all. Just enough to clean up the seams and make everything look nice. But that's how this is done. And like I said, it adds a lot of strength. I got all that done. I got all the seams flattened out best I can. I'm going to use the grinder now, and then I'll jump onto the sander and maybe a little bit of filing, but I'm just going to get after it. I'm going to start with the grinder, start knocking stuff down. I'm going to move around to keep from generating heat. As soon as it gets hot in one spot, I'm going to move to another spot and then just keep going until I get everything done, cleaned up the way I want it. I got the dome all sanded down nice, so I'm definitely going to have to put some body filler around that seam on the where the domes seam together. Also, had a little bit of weirdness happen up here with some of the supports, so that's also going to get some body filler. So pretty much most of the dome is going to get at least a skim coat of body filler. The ears, where the ears go, will also get it. And I think most of the rest of it won't need any body filler, especially the lower area of the cheeks, around the visor. I think all that is just going to be done with primer. So let me go ahead and mix up some body filler and start wiping this thing. Let's get some body filler mixed up. Now this stuff is a glaze putty. It's usually used as a finishing putty, but for doing 3D prints it works great because it sands really well and it is not high build. If you have some areas that are in bad shape, you might want to use a more traditional body filler, but this stuff right here should do the job. As you can see, it's a lot thinner than traditional body filler, which makes it really easy to spread, but it also can get out of control really quick, so you got to be careful with it. Try to avoid getting into those triangles there. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and take my pocket knife and just clean some of these edges up. So we can keep these body lines as sharp as possible. Alright, we'll set that aside and let that set up. Alright, I got this, this is all set up, so I'm going to start hitting it with some 80. Just to knock down all the high spots, and then I'll switch to 180 to finish sand everything and get it ready for primer. Alright, the dome's pretty good. I got a few spots I need to wipe a little bit more on the dome. It's time to do the ears. So I'm going to mix up some more filler for the ears, and then the little spots on the dome that need attention, I'll go ahead and hit those also. Then we'll pretty much be ready for primer. All set. Let that set up and we'll be ready to sand that down. Alright, I got all the sanding done, all the mud work done. The camera died while I was gluing the ears on. I went ahead and sanded and glued the ears on, and I hadn't realized that either something happened to the camera or the data was corrupt, one or the other. I don't have that, I'm sorry. We missed that part. But I did put these ears on, and I have some of the rangefinder pieces right here. Here's the rangefinder. It'll sit up here like so. But anyway, the ears are on. They look really good. They turned out the way I wanted them to. Now, originally I was going to cut off a piece of the helmet right here and add this piece to the ear so I could put a standard ear on both sides if I wanted to do that. And that was it was a plan to help make this helmet a little more versatile and do other things, but then since then I've changed my mind. I'm just going to go ahead and go with the way it is, so I'm not going to modify that part of the helmet. But we're pretty much ready for primer. This stuff is super thick. It is like one of the thickest primers I've ever used. It's so thick it's actually hard to go through the gun and really could be reduced. It is thick enough that you can actually brush it on. Matter of fact, it even has directions on how to brush it on. They recommend you use miniature foam rollers or regular standard chip brushes. But you can very easily, if you don't have a paint gun like I do, and an air compressor, you can very easily mix this stuff up and brush it on. I have a workshop that we do on Wednesday nights, and people have brought 3D prints down here to clean them up, and everyone asks me, is there a shortcut? Is there a quick, easy way? Some people like to do with ABS prints. They use acetone to kind of smooth out layer lines and stuff like that. There's also resins you can take and brush on or spray on. And they do work. Problem is, they also smooth out and take away, remove, and cover up detail that you want to keep. It makes your body lines less sharp. It changes a lot of the piece you're working on. I'm totally in the realm of there's no easy way to you can get yourself to a certain pot you're happy with a shortcut, and if you're happy to deal with something like that, that's totally fine. I, on the other hand, do not believe in shortcuts. I see the results. I've never been surprised by any of the results, and I will tell you why. One, it builds so well that even just spraying it on, it's actually concealing layer lines without sanding. Before you even sand, the thing looks 100% better just because it's so thick. And once you sand it, it sands really well. It sands easy. It sands very easy to sand. It doesn't clog your paper up. It's a catalyzed primer, so the chances of large amounts of shrinking and pull back and ring out and all that kind of stuff are kind of not an issue with this primer because it is a catalyzed primer. So once you spray it, you let it sit. I think this stuff you can start sanding in like a half hour, 45 minutes later. You can even wait longer. Sometimes I like to, as soon as it's dry enough to sand, I like to cut it with sandpaper and then let it sit longer. By cutting the sandpaper, it actually helps to get all the gases and anything else that's going on during the curing process. It helps accelerate it out because it does build a skin. And once it gets out, say you sanded it and then let it sit another day or overnight, I've never had any shrinking problems. I've never had anything ring out and show some repairs or body work or anything like that. So this stuff is really good. The biggest downfall to this stuff is it's so thick. So I've already done this for like 20 minutes. Shake. Got to shake this stuff up. I recommend if you have this stuff once a week, just grab it and shake it. Just keep it from settling because it's got a lot of solids in it. That's part of the building process to build up the material that the stuff settles to the bottom. So I'm gonna shake this for another second or two. This is a polyester-based primer, so it smells a lot like fiberglass. Now, I am going to be spraying this outside. Now, you can buy this by the quart. I think it's about $30 or $40 a quart, and a quart will, one quart is probably enough to do 2 or 3 helmet projects, depending on how much work you do getting up to the priming stage. So I'm going to stir this stuff up because, like I said, it loves to settle. You can see right there, you can see chunks right on the end of the paint stick. So I'm going to really get this stirred up. And you want it stirred up. You want all that material suspended so it will have the best, so it'll perform at its best. The more stuff that's suspended, or the more fill material that is suspended in this, the better. The more it works, the better it works. All right, now I'm going to be mixing up 3 ounces of primer. That's actually a lot. Probably 2 would be ideal, but I want to try to do this in 1 big prime and then maybe a small spot prime follow-up gel. All right, that's good. Now, since it is a polyester base, I'm going to get the helmet out of the way while I pour. Since it is a polyester base, it uses the exact same hardener that you would use on fiberglass resin. It uses the exact same hardener as fiberglass resin. And what I like to do is, I worked it out, I figured out what the formula is. Per ounce, 1 ounce of material comes to 0.7 milliliters. So 3 ounces would, I believe, be 2.8 milliliters. That sounds about right. 3 ounces. 3 times 7, 20, yeah, so 2.8 milliliters. I use a little millimeter syringe. I actually have these because I use these on small molds. I inject resin with these. So that's why I have this. So when I pour out my 3 ounces in my mixing cup right here, then I can turn right around and shoot in my 2.8 milliliters of hardener and prepare for priming. I'm going to take the helmet outside. I'm going to put it on a stand. I'm going to set up some other pieces like the rangefinder and the cap, the ear cap for the rangefinder side of the helmet. So let's get to mixing. All right, there we go, 3 ounces. Put the lid back on. In goes the hardener. And back to the paint stick. Mix this up for I'll probably mix this for about a minute, 30 seconds to a minute. Make sure it's all mixed in. It's not a lot of hardener, but you do have to mix it up, make sure it's all mixed up. Well, the worst thing is having something that doesn't set up. I've got horror stories of materials that didn't set up because either improper amount of hardener, not enough mixing. All right, in we go. And you can see, if you look at this cup, this stuff is as thick as a milkshake. This stuff's nice and thick. And that's why it builds. That's how it builds up. Gives you a nice surface for finishing. So I'm going to take you guys outside. I'm going to set the helmet up outside. I'm going to bring an air hose outside, and we'll get this primer on that helmet. All right, so, well, gun is clogged up, so I'm using a different gun. So I don't have a cup for this gun, so pour, spray, pour, but here we go. Not exactly the ideal way to do this, but it will work. That by far was the least ideal situation, and it's way too cold out here. So I'm actually going to bring this in a few minutes so it can sit and cure in the warmth. But this thing not working. I've never had a problem out of this gun, and this is the first time, and I'm going to have to take it apart and rebuild it and find out. This one worked okay, but it's not set up to spray this heavy of material, so not a lot was coming out. So I don't think I have any runs because there wasn't enough material coming out to run.